In this video, I'll be looking at the verb discuss. The question is, discuss the role of plate tectonics in shaping Earth's surface features. 7 marks. The verb discuss means identify issues and provide points for and or against. Now, in junior science, we expect students to write both positives and negatives for a discuss question. Okay, it doesn't matter if it's a thing which is all about positives. It's got to have some negatives in the response. So you must mention both positives and negatives. So discuss means get into detail in terms of the pros and cons. And 7 marks, we're going to be using the idea paragraph format. Okay, so I tell students, don't shy away from questions like these, embrace them. And if you really just split up your response into just sections, it should be not difficult to construct. So the first part of the idea paragraph is to identify. So identify, in this case, what plate tectonics are. So you would write plate tectonics. So this is a broad introduction statement. Plate tectonics is driven by convective currents and gravity due to Earth's mantle. Okay, and these so these processes commonly occur at plate boundaries where they can converge, diverge, or slide past one another. Okay, so that's your 2 marks there. I'll show you what the criteria is typically. 2 marks for identify. So 1 mark for mentioning the processes that drive plate tectonics, so convection currents and gravity, and 1 mark for mentioning where they occur typically. Okay, because you need to provide some context. Okay, they can occur anywhere on the Earth, but it's nice to provide an example because that's where you get into some detail in the rest of the response. So I is identify, 2 marks there. The next is describe. So this is going into a bit more detail. Describe just means to sketch the general features of something. So if I was to say describe your chair, if it's a blue chair, you would say it's blue, it's got 4 legs, it's, I don't know, small, and so on and so forth. So I would now go into detail for evidence supporting plate tectonics. So I'll talk about evidence. So I would write evidence supporting plate tectonics comes in a variety of forms. You can write, for example, you've got geological features. Okay, I'd say that's the most textbook common example. Geological features like mountain ranges like the Himalayas, volcanic arcs, so these are like chains of volcanoes, and ocean trenches. Okay, align with plate boundaries. So these features occur along plate boundaries. For example, we've got mountain ranges. They typically form from converging plate boundaries. So 2 plates, they'll converge, they'll meet together, and they'll form a mountain range. Volcanoes, they'll typically form by 2 plates diverging, so moving apart, and allowing for magma to rise, forming a volcano. So that's evidence right there. That will be another 2 marks. So evidence, geological features, that's a mark there. And mentioning the link between features and plate boundaries, that's another mark, so that's 2 marks there. So it's already 4 marks. We've got most of the marks here. And like I always say, it doesn't have to be word for word, so long as your response is logical, coherent, so it's concise, it's clear, straight to the point. It doesn't have to mention everything I've mentioned here. It could be a completely different style of response, but has to follow this logical order. Okay, starting very broad, making your way through. Okay, that's described. Let's go into explain. I would now talk about implications. Okay, so impacts on human activity. So I would write plate tectonics profoundly. You can write significantly. It's really up to you. Profoundly affects human activities. So you can write, for example, here, e.g. volcanic eruptions. So I'm giving you an example. It's not enough to just state how they, the fact that they affect human activity. It's important to state an example to show how that actually happens. So volcanic eruptions and earthquakes. So these are the most prominent examples, I'd say, most common examples. Pose significant hazards, and they do, as we know. Significant hazards to communities living near plate boundaries. You just have to watch the news. Okay, typically earthquakes happening in Japan, because Japan sits on a plate boundary. Japan, volcanic eruptions occurring in the Pacific. Okay, those sorts of events, you hear about them all the time. They do affect human activity. You can write volcanic eruptions can destroy the biosphere. The biosphere is a region on the earth where living forms are found, where life is, humans, plants, trees, all that sort of stuff. They can destroy the biosphere, and earthquakes can damage human infrastructure. Okay, for example, you can go into more detail. I'm just going to leave it at that. You probably get the point. So that's another 2 marks here. So we're on to 6 marks. You can write human activities. So that's 1 mark there. As a marker, I would see that and go, yep, human activities, that's an impact. Volcanic eruptions and earthquakes, another mark there. So that's 2 marks now. We're on to 6 marks. And the analyze, this is the conclusion. In other words, the conclusion is basically wrapping up what you've just said. And you have to present your conclusion with either a pro or a con. So you can choose one or the other as long as it's supported in your text. So I would choose, I would write in the following way. So in conclusion, this is your concluding statement. In conclusion, plate tectonics plays a vital role in shaping Earth's surface features and influencing human activities. Understanding these processes is important for helping minimize the effects of natural hazards. Okay. Natural hazards.